Magically veiled from sight, the three gliders hurtle out of the night sky, silent as shadows, arcing down towards their target. The factory fortress of Hammerhold dominates the skyline of Chaintop, a vast black iron monolith, 12 towering chimneys belching black, spark-filled smoke into the cool night air. The industrial district of Kairos houses many production facilities, from machine works to assembly plants, but none can compete with Hammerhold for sheer scale or significance. Because Hammerhold, as every citizen of Kairos knows, is perhaps the single most important place in the city, perhaps even in the Empire. This single, sprawling factory, unmatched anywhere in either size or sophistication, is the beating heart of the Empire, the source of its incomparable arsenal. Hammerhold is the Dominion's greatest weapon production facility. There is nowhere more symbolic of the power of the Kairos Dominion. How catastrophic for the Empire, then, for Hammerhold to have fallen into the hands of the Cult of the Machine. Even from this height, Tatters can see the scores of machine cultist guards and the bodies littering the streets. The disaster this represents for the Archdominar is incalculable. Following close on the heels of the civil war in the city, this is surely a fatal blow to their fractured aura of invincibility. Gritting her teeth against the wind, Tatters grips the controls of her glider and follows the Vale sisters' barely visible descent. This thing is little more than scraps of cloth stretched taut over a lightwood wooden frame, and scarcely seems airworthy to her, but so far, so good. If they can just make it down to the factory rooftop unseen, perhaps they can sneak in unnoticed. Maybe things are going her way for once. Which is when Satara speaks in her mind.
I grow weary of spectating. Return control of your body to me, just for a short time. I would play.
Tatters shakes her head in frustration and disbelief. Not now. Any time but now. Go to hell, she snarls, the words whipped away by the wind. Back in your box, demon! She feels the pressure beginning to grow as the monster struggles to break through her mental defenses, pummeling at her will with rage-fueled frenzy. Gathering everything of herself into one potent assault, she releases a powerful counterblow that shatters the demon's grip. It also releases a pulse of raw, wild magic that spreads out from her and washes over the three skimmers. They all, instantly, become all too visible. Tatters gulps. Whoops. Last time on the Lone Adventurer. Tatters boarded the Undying flagship, discovered the Vale sisters now served the vampires, and was able to forge an alliance with the vampire lord Tortimus against their many mutual foes. But in the process of sharing intelligence, a shocking discovery was made. The Ring of Winter, an ancient and evil artifact of unspeakable power, had fallen into the hands of the machine cult. There was only one thing for it. Tatters, along with Mara and Lynn Vale, was going to have to recover that ring. Hello and welcome to The Lone Adventurer, an actual play solo RPG podcast with me, Carl White. I will be your narrator, your game master, and your guide as we follow our heroes on their journey into the unknown. For this game, I will be using the Chasing Adventure rule set, as well as a variety of other systems, tools, and tables as they take my fancy. A word of warning. The following scenes may contain mature themes and disturbing imagery. Listener discretion is advised. Dear listener, I find myself conflicted. I knew when I began this chapter that I wanted a setting for the assault on the machine cult, some sort of dramatic fantasy stronghold that would look cool and require challenging infiltration. But I wasn't really sure what that stronghold would look like, and so I turned to a part of my virtual GM toolkit that has not seen much use in recent episodes: AI. I have very mixed feelings about AI generally, and its application in creative endeavours specifically. On the one hand are questions about ethics, sustainability, and social impact. On the other, there's utility. It really can be an enormously helpful tool. I do wonder, though, if it can be a little bit too useful. That by instantly providing us with exactly what we want, we perhaps lose sight of what we need, and lose touch with those skills and processes required to get it. This particular use of AI was a case in point. I gave my AI assistant the following prompt. Genre: Magitech. Lord Tortimus has proposed sending Tatters, along with his 2 bodyguards, the Vale sisters, on a mission to retrieve the Ring of Winter from the leader of the machine cult. Describe the mission parameters, including the keywords mysterious vehicle. And the response was nothing short of stupendous. A remarkably detailed and on-point mission profile that gave me exactly what I was looking for, and more besides. If you want to read that in full, I have included it, only very lightly edited, in the show notes. A follow-up question provided me with even more detail about my destination, and in just a few minutes I was fully set up to begin my adventure. The problem I see with this, at least one of the problems, is just how seductive this tool is. It has provided all of the prep heavy lifting in seconds and left me free to play. But I do wonder, at what cost? Could I have used random tables and Oracle prompt interpretations to create something similar? Well, certainly. Would it have taken longer? Absolutely. Most importantly, have I lost something by delegating that responsibility? An important lesson that Sean Tompkin provides in Ironsworn is that prep is play. By that I mean that it is not just the adventure that's part of the play experience for me. It's the creation of everything that leads to that adventure, creating a character, building a world, designing a supporting tool. Creativity takes many forms, and all of them should be considered different aspects of the play experience. There's also the question of skills. Part of playing a solo RPG, indeed part of any creative endeavour, is the building of skill sets, of developing mental muscle memory and adaptability, of gradually, painfully, growing. I do wonder if the use of AI might represent a risk of erosion to those skill sets, a sort of abdication which might, in time, ultimately result in reliance, or even dependence. The impact of AI is, of course, a far wider and more consequential topic than the way in which it affects my solo RPG workflow. But I have found my specific instance a useful microcosm of the larger effect of AI on creativity. For now, I think I'll continue to include AI as one of the components of my GM emulation toolkit. But I'll be keeping a close eye on it and checking in to see whether I feel like the tool is taking on too great a role. Onwards then, to Hammerhold. The trio land on a section of comparatively flat rooftop, shielded from view by huge vents. "What in Espris Sporon was that?" Mara growls, towering over Tatters as she untangles herself from the remains of her glider. Landing has proved somewhat trickier than flying. "Nothing deliberate, I promise you that," the young arcanist snaps back, defiant. "You think I wanted us to be seen? I guess we just have to hope that no one was looking up. She doesn't feel anywhere near as cocky as she sounds. Lynn reaches down, picks up her pack, and yawns. There's no way in the void they didn't see us coming in. They'd have to be blind or stupid. That's our element of surprise blown, I'm afraid. Bloody spell singers, Mara mutters to herself, though in truth there's not that much heat in it. The trio crouch low atop the monumental factory, listening for any signs of the alarm being sounded, but miraculously no signs come. After several minutes and some careful reconnoitering, they are forced to conclude that they have gotten lucky. Tatters gets up, dusting herself off. No harm done, it seems. She considers apologising, but she's feeling foolish enough already. The last thing she needs now is to show further weakness in front of these two. Instead, she points at the nearest ventilation tower. I suggest we focus on what we came here to do and get that damned ring. What do you think? Does that look like a viable way in? With Lynn taking point, it is not long before the three of them are perched high on a steel rafter, perhaps 100 feet above the floor of an enormous chamber. Some sort of warehouse or storage facility, perhaps, Tatters whispers, though Mara only shrugs in reply. The vast room echoes with the sounds of distant footsteps, but otherwise is completely empty. Well, which way? Lynn asks, and Tatters, thinking back to the scrying ritual she had performed aboard the Night Queen's shadow, points tentatively. That way, I think. Mara arches an eyebrow. You think? Tatters can hear the defensiveness in her own voice even as she answers, but she can't help herself. Hey, if you're not happy with the quality of my service, maybe next time you'd like to try the remote viewing spell on a target a mile away without a tag log or even the vaguest prior knowledge of location. Settle down, you two, Lynn grins lopsidedly. You keep this up, we're going to have to find you a room. Come on, follow me. Scowling, Tatters and Mara comply. As a palette cleanser, after my AI mission setup, I decided to do some tool building in order to explore a procedurally generated Hammerhold, and that took me down a fairly deep and really rather enjoyable rabbit hole. There are a couple of tools that I've used in solo RPGs before that work well for this sort of dungeon delve. The first is from Jason Lute's Perilous Wilds, which I used for Mina's first foray into the Underpipes. The second is the Ironsworn Delve mechanics, where you match a domain with a theme to create unique environments filled with a variety of features and dangers. For this delve, I decided to create a bit of a hybrid of the two systems, plus a new one, using the theme of Magitech and the domain of Factory. These don't exist in the Ironsworn Delve rules, but thankfully Stephanie M. had created her own and made them available for free online, and so I plugged those into a custom perchance random generator. The links to that generator, as well as Stephanie's excellent fantasy themes and urban domains, are all in the show notes. I'll also be pinching the dungeon exploration chain dice idea from Kernathalis, which I read about on Reddit. Thanks for the steer on that, L. Hauser1. You start with whatever size die you like as the starter when mapping rooms to a dungeon, say a D10, and after you've explored the first location, you roll the die. On a 1, or perhaps a 1 or a 2 if you want to progress faster, you drop down to the next size of die, in this case a D8. You keep going until you reach a D4, and if you roll a 1 on that, you've discovered the boss monster, or the end of the dungeon. It's an elegant system that keeps the size of the location a mystery. Hold on a minute though, wasn't I just banging on about not relying on crutches when creating? Haven't I sort of done exactly the same thing by using somebody else's work, pinching mechanisms and content from other people or systems? This does seem to return me to my musings on AI again. How much load should I carry, and how much should I delegate? Should I make everything from scratch? Have it all done for me? Or should the correct point lie somewhere in the middle, and if so, How close to the middle or to either of the two extremes? Am I arguing with myself about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin? Probably. Does any of this matter? Well, probably not. I think in this, as in so many things, the real question to answer is, am I having fun? And yes, gentle listener, I'm happy to report that I am. So let's put all of these moral quandaries to one side and move on. Let's have a quick overview of the mechanics that have provided our teaser and first scene. To kick us off, I started scene 1 with a mythic chaos factor of 6, described the scene as night flight to Hammerhold, and then got a scene interrupt with the detail disrupt protection. Well, that one pretty much wrote itself. For scene 2, I upped the chaos factor to 7, named the scene rooftop infiltration, and got away with the scene starting as expected. I knocked off a point of interpersonal disposition from each of Mara and Lynn's oceanic scores, following Tatters' less than stellar start to the mission, though that still leaves them both on 4 out of 5. From here, I thought it was likely they'd been spotted, but Mythic decided that they hadn't, and so I moved on to exploration. I've ported over the see what they find move from Perilous Wilds, along with that system's location countdown mechanic, and so my first roll gave me a huge, high-ceilinged room with no dangers and the keywords clean and festive. I didn't fancy having this be the scene of the Machine Cult's office Christmas party, so I ignored that second keyword. Next, I performed one of Tatter's class moves, Ritual, combined with an examine move in order to see what she had learned and what price she might have paid when determining the location of the voice of the machine. It turned out that that ritual had gone pretty well with no costs, but that she had only received some fairly basic intelligence. As for the banter and interaction between my characters, none of that is coming from any rolls. For now, I'm just enjoying bouncing these 3 characters off each other based on what I know of their personalities. None of this stuff is really consequential, so I don't feel the need to use Oceanic to provide me guidance just at the moment. That may change if I get stuck, or if an important decision comes up. This also ties to one of the guiding principles I wrote for this game. Don't use an oracle or make a roll unless you need to. Okay, let's see where our heroes find themselves next. The entente glaciale between Tatters and Mara does not last long. They are bickering long before they reach the locked door.
I'm just saying, if you can't control your magic, maybe you should have made that clear before we started the mission, rather than after.
Tatters bristles, despite the undeniable logic of Mara's observation.
I can control my magic a damn sight better than you seem to be able to control your temper, she snaps, furiously ignoring the irony of that statement, given her own simmering rage. Maybe just keep your head in the game, yeah?
Mara is about to deliver a withering retort as they turn the corner, but there is something in the urgency of Tatter's raised hand that cuts her off dead. Ahead of them, lining the broad corridor, perhaps 60 feet in length, thick glass tubes are pumping what appears to be molten lava towards an enormous, riveted iron door at the far end. Other than that, the corridor is completely empty. Which poses an interesting question. Where the hell is Lynn? Tatters is incredulous.
She said she was taking point, not heading in alone. Why wouldn't she wait for us?
Mara is suddenly all business, and Tatters is reminded suddenly of the woman's deadly reputation.
She would. Something's wrong. Be quiet and follow me.
They reach the door, which is perhaps 12 feet wide and about the same in height, only to find it will not budge. Tatters glances back the way they came, nervous. She is painfully aware that they are at a dead end. If anyone happens to come around that corner, they will have nowhere to run.
This is the only way she could have come, Mara. She must have gone through.
They examine the door, but there appears to be no keyhole or activation mechanism. Tatters says what they are both thinking. This probably isn't mechanical, at least not the locking mechanism. I think the lock is arcane in nature. Mara grunts, then kneels and taps gently against the door 3 times. There is a pause, followed by 3 sharp taps in response. She straightens, her face creased in concern. I think you're right. She must have gone through, and the damn door closed behind her. Obviously, she's having about as much luck as we are getting the damn thing open again. This is a problem. Tatters can see the woman is torn. They have a mission, right enough, but it's plain there is no way Mara is going to abandon her sister. They are stuck here, with no apparent way through. The Arcanist sighs. This is the very last thing she needs, but it's plain to her there is only one solution to this problem. You might want to stand back, Mara, she says, as tendrils of glowing purple begin to spread out, first surrounding her, then snaking out to probe at the seams around the door. We're about to find out exactly how much control of my magic I actually have. A very short scene, mechanically at least, this time. The chaos factor went down to 6. I described the scene as hunting the halls of Hammerhold, and then checked to see if the scene began as expected. Oh, no, said Mythic, of course not. Surely you're familiar with how this works by now. You come up with a viable plan, and then I come up with a dirty great monkey wrench to jam into it. Yes, Mythic, I'm familiar with the process. In this instance, Mythic announced that the wrench was an altered scene, and that specifically the alteration involved an increase in activity and the removal of a character. It seemed obvious to me that the activity in question was that Tatters and Mara had set back to bickering, which in turn distracted them enough to lose Lynn. That made even more sense when I made my see what they find move, which gave me a feature of everyday devices powered by magic, a locked door, and the keywords spacious and natural. All jumbled together in the tumble dryer of my mind, these prompts led me to the location that we just saw. I then asked Mythic a single question, with 50-50 odds. Was there a response to Mara's tapping? Thankfully, the answer was yes, and that's that. On to the next scene, and time to see if Tatters can pull a proverbial rabbit out of an equal proverbial hat. Contact. Tatters' mind sinks into that other place, a world at once concurrent with her own and radically asynchronous. It is so much more, so much deeper. This is hyper-reality, a place that makes the real world appear like a grey, washed-out echo by comparison. She can see lines of shimmering, fluctuating power running through everything, through her own body and that of Mara beside her, through the walls, the door, and on the far side of the door, through Lynn. Everything is connected, an integrated latticework of vital energy. This is the fabric. She sees the raw arcanicity flowing through the door, fixing it in place, and traces it back. There is no true source exactly, in the same way that there is no true beginning or end, but there are focal points of power, places where applied will can alter the flow. Now, for the hard part. She draws deep on her reserves, refusing to accept the possibility that this casting might be the one that unleashes the demon within. She is strong. She has years upon years of practice, discipline, and focus to draw upon. The demon cannot change what she is, not in any way that really matters. She extends her awareness, spreading her consciousness ever wider into the fabric, drawing power into herself even as she gathers her will tighter and tighter into a microscopic diamond-hard point. She stabs deep into the heart of a power nexus, altering the flow of power, and begins to pull out. But as she does so, something draws her attention. Something wrong. The shape of the fabric around her feels distorted somehow, mutilated, pressed into unnatural configurations that whisper of catastrophe to come. She is able to capture the briefest glimpse of the true shape of it, a stroboscopic flash frame of an image larger than her mind can contain. And then she's out, back in the world, wide-eyed and panting. The heavy iron door is swinging slowly open, entirely soundlessly, revealing a grinning Lynn on the far side. The woman is saying something, but for some reason she can't quite make sense of the words. Tatters is dimly aware that she is only standing because Mara is holding her up. She tries to speak, fails, and tries again. "It's wrong. It's not right." "I think our spell chucker might be broken," Lynn says, laughing, though Tatters thinks she detects an undercurrent of concern. "She's gone a bit weird." Tatters steadies herself, balling her fists to stop her hands from shaking. She pulls free of Mara and makes a third attempt. "Well, the good news is, I think I've pretty much gained control of all the doors in this place. If we hit another, I should be able to open it or close it. The bad news, though, I saw something. I felt something while I was submerged in the fabric. There's something really, really wrong with this place. Whatever the voice of the machine is doing with that ring, it's twisting reality into shapes it's not meant to be. If my understanding of what I saw is correct, he's trying to use the Ring of Winter to somehow connect two things that should not be joined, things that aren't even in the same physical plane of existence. For some reason, I think he's trying to splice together Hammerhold into the Great Machine." Once again, the path of my PC's life is strewn with cowpats from Mythic's own satanic herd. Not satisfied with slamming a big iron door in my face, my virtual GM now informs me that the stakes have been raised once again and that the end, as ever, is nigh. Well, sort of. Let me explain. To kick off with, I raised the chaos factor to 7, described my scene as time to use a magic lockpick, and confirmed that the scene had started as expected. From there, I made a compound set of adventurer moves. First, because Tatters was desperate for this spell to work given her row with Mara, she pushed the roll, meaning that she would roll with advantage. That triggered her ability, Equivalent Exchange, which says that when you push yourself to evoke a spell, your spell also becomes greater. Next, she evoked the spell Technomancy, and got a straight success. And because of Equivalent Exchange, she also got the spell's greater function. In addition to opening the door, the effect of the spell is ongoing and grants a benefit that I had not anticipated. I wasn't sure about that greater benefit, and so I asked Mythic. Really, by now I should know better. Here's the prompt I got in response. Random event. Move away from a thread, end the civil war in the city. Meaning, move information. The event relates to an item, Arcanicity. If required, here is a Starforged action and theme, Scheme Passage. And here is a Mythic 2 descriptor and focus, Slowly Glorious. As usual, the disparate parts all swirled together in my mind and informed me that Tatters' awareness of her location had expanded and given her a glimpse of what the voice was up to. That was the move information and scheme part. The nature of the plan was next. Moving away from that thread meant this was bad news for the Dominion. We had an evil master plan being hatched that risked turning the tide of the Civil War. And then there was Arcanicity and Passage and Slowly Glorious. It was the word glory that got me. Where had I heard that before? Oh, yes, of course.
For the glory of the great machine!
Curse you, Mythic. What have I ever done to you? Why do you torment me so? Hold up, Mythic says. This is all a bit rich. All I do is give you abstract prompts when you ask me questions. It's hardly my fault if your subconscious seems to continually insist on turning them into earth-shattering cataclysms. Stones in glass houses and all that. Oh, sod off. Oh, right. Mea culpa, I suppose. It's true that I could have interpreted those prompts completely differently. Maybe. But it's much more satisfying blaming you, Mythic, and so the blame you shall receive. And thus, exonerated of any guilt or responsibility, I shall continue to pit my fragile characters against a world gone mad, ruled by a capricious and malevolent intelligence. Next time. You have been listening to The Lone Adventurer, a solo RPG podcast played, written, and performed by me, Carl White. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider telling your friends about it or leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really is a huge help. You can email me at theloneadv@gmail.com or follow my blog at carlillustration.wordpress.com. You can find show notes for this episode and all the others at theloneadventurer.podbean.com, where I include any links mentioned in the episode, as well as mechanics information. I also include a link to a full episode transcript. The story will continue in the next episode of The Lone Adventurer. Thank you for listening.
Do you like your tabletop RPGs to be grim, gritty, and grounded? If so, then Legend of the Bones is the podcast for you. A hybrid of dark fantasy audio drama and old-school solo D&D. In Legend of the Bones, the dice rule. There'll be no rerolls, no fudging the dice, no metacurrency. The roll of the bones will determine the character's destiny, and no one will be spared their fate. None shall escape the destiny of Bone.